Some usual, very standard thing I will present. The presentation will be about maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes max. Then we will repeat the demo that was done by Alexis this morning, because we have not necessarily the same people in the two meetings, and then Q&A. We really give time for Q&A, just maybe sometimes to have the time to think about the question. So at least half an hour will be on the opportunity for you to ask questions. And it's very important for you to be able to ask questions. It helps you, I hope, and us also, because from your question, we can infer what is not clear and update our documentation also. Okay, let's wait like 30 more seconds. It will be past 2, and then we will start. I see also that the number is increasing now a bit slower. So thanks again for everyone who joined. Today will be a general update about the work that has been done in the Gaia-X architecture and the terms and use that we are doing. And it's using one of the, it's not 101 presentation that I've already done. So there is specific content and presentation that I'm doing now, because that's supposed to be a tech deep dive. So I will go a bit deeper than what I usually do. And I will hope that you will find that useful. I will also monitor the chat at the same time. I will not monitor raise hands, but I will monitor chat. So if you have a question, something, and you want to type quickly, I will try to answer that live. First question, or first slide is not about Gaia-X. Data spaces. I know that tech deep dive and we start data spaces, that might be a bit weird, but that's the user point of view. What do we need a data space for, or how to build more exactly a data space? For a data space, taking all the definition that we have, OpenDI, Simple, IDSA, Fireware, iShare, and so on. Sorry if I forgot some. The Lighthouse project. You always need to have a governance. So that's the set of rules. Infrastructure, that's the set of API endpoints. So the network, the interfaces, the API, their Swagger, OpenAPI, and so on. And of course, people using it. If you don't have anyone using this group, adopting the set of rules, using the infrastructure, then this is not really a data space. And I quoted the data space definition of the European Commission, specifically on the transparent data in a fair, transparent, proportionate, and non-discriminatory manner with clear and trustworthy data governance mechanisms. So that's really, I think, in line. The definition of the European Commission is also mandating European rules and law, but Gaia-X is not limited to European. So I prefer not to include that here. Clear governance at least is there. This only gives us some opportunities, challenges, problem, if you want. Because if we take these definitions of what we need, then we don't have like 1, 2, or 10 data spaces. We have literally thousands of existing data spaces. 2 or 3 opportunities, they are not discoverable. So when you look for data, where do you go? Of course, if you take for granted that you know with who you want to work with, then it's easier. But if you are an SME, a big corporation, doesn't really matter, an institute, public administration, research center, and you want to find data, to use data, where do you go? So they are hardly discoverable. The governance and the infrastructure, in terms of interoperability and being able to assess interoperability, is kind of hard, if not sometimes impossible. And when we talk about federating data spaces, the scaling can be very expensive. So not necessarily just only about time, money, but also time, effort, a burden of administrative work. And the answer to that from Gaia-X is that we are working on a federated catalog. As a reminder, that's so important within Gaia-X. That's one of the only deliverable that is black and white on the status of the association. And this is not limited to services, but services and product. We are extending that a bit. a worldwide governance based on European values. I'm not here mentioning European rules, but European values. So the values that we've seen before in the slide: fairness, transparency, privacy preserving, and so on. And this governance, which we are making accessible for every initiatives around the world, must be extendable. So it's not like you need to adopt Gaia-X and that's all. No, we want you to adopt Gaia-X, but also to tune it or to extend that for your needs, because we know that for vertical ecosystem, local market per domain, you will have additional set of rules that you need to be able to implement. So that's the baseline, and that's the customization. And now if you have customization of 3 data spaces, so 1, 2, and 3, that might have their own set of additional governance extended from the baseline, then how do you measure interoperability? And this measurement of interoperability cannot be binary. I don't think, it's like in math, when you are doing gradient optimization, you have a measurement, you have a matrix, L1, L2, or other, least square minimum analysis, and you measure the distance between where you are, your objective, and then it helps you to converge. That's exactly what we want to do. So data spaces are not independent, autonomous. And if you want to know how far you are in terms of interoperability, instead of trying to impose rules saying that everyone has to use one thing, which is probably never going to work, there has been initiative like that in the past, we believe that it's easier to help the market, to help our members to in fact measure how far you are in terms of interoperability. There is a new chapter there will be a new chapter in the architecture document talking about that, and that's called the trust indexes. The trust indexes comes after what we call right now compliance. So the compliance, that's very binary, you are compliant or not, but we don't live in a binary world, and to be able to steer and to help converging, we need to have floats, we need to have a measurement, and that's what we provide. So the Gaia-X model, when I present, when you take the picture that we have inside the architecture document, you might recognize those 3 layers from the NIST. In fact, that's the NIST paper that is being called the trust plane, the management plane, and the usage plane. The federation are more focusing on the infrastructure, what I said before. So that's the set of service endpoint, API protocols, schema, and so on. The data space, that's more like the business point of view. And because this is a deep dive, I allowed myself to be a bit more like specific on the word I'm using. So link data to describe product party services with associated policies, and I have a special 2 slides on that part alone, that are enabling us to build a knowledge graph. And this knowledge graph using the ontology, so the ontology is again a mean to describe element, we are able to implement rules and governance. That's where the trust framework is leaning on, what the trust framework is leaning on. In terms of technical footprint, that's a question I'm getting quite often, is what do I need to use to be Gaia compliant, or what can I use? Yes, and what should I use? We really try to make that as small as possible, because again, we don't believe that enforcing much of technical mean will be easy to scale, and we prefer to let the market adopt and measure how far they are. Here, so that's very much about the trust framework, the common governance by Gaia-X. Important point is that this common governance is being worked with the European regulation. For example, how do we help data intermediaries from the Data Governance Act to build that, and other initiatives. So I'm keeping the text on the left, and I'm updating the slides on the right. So this common governance is adopted by the data space authorities. This is a term that is, for example, inside the data space support center, the data intermediaries, which is coming from the next European Act, the Data Governance Act. This common governance is also used by the federation to seek interoperability. Again, with this idea that if you want to make your service composable, you need to be able to describe them in a common way, so that you know that this load balancer can access this data, that you have on the same network, that you are using the same infrastructure. And then the final arrow is very much between federation and data spaces. Gaia-X is not involved in the last step. We don't want the association to be a SPOF or central authority of anything. Technically speaking, okay, that's nice arrow. What are under those arrow? That's exclusively an exchange of credentials. So basically, from the clearinghouse, which are the implementation of the trust framework, we issue, request, exchange credentials. With the federation, same thing, and federation and data spaces, same thing. That's the only way how we can implement this decentralized in sharing of information. And how those are being translated, technically speaking, that's again a summary of what we have right now in the various specification. For the link data, JSON link data. For the decentralized graph, we are using W3C verifiable credentials. There are different formats, JSON LD or JSON GWT, JSON Web Token. For the governance and the ontology, we are using very standard ontology, shackle file tools. And for the minimalistic or small technical footprint, we are using, you will recognize existing RFC spec, existing OpenID spec, presentation exchange, which is a bit newer, and we lean on the state-of-the-art for confidential computing. I will explain that, or if there is question about that. That's basically when we have policies, how do you make sure that those policies are being negotiated? The reasoning of those policies can be trusted. The engine, where is it running? So that can be achieved through remote workload attestation. And the picture I've used in the background, which is a bit transparent, is not like a nice picture I stole from a Google image. That's the picture of our Gaia-X ontology. So that's the real Gaia-X ontology to describe services, participant, resources. For today, I would like to focus on the notion of policies and the impact it will have. In terms of policies, there is a specification from the W3C that is being called ODRL for Open Digital Right Language. They have a model to describe those policies, and the model looks like that. I'm not going to go through that one. There is a simplified version of it on their website. It's still too complex, so I made a simpler version of it, and that one is good enough. So we have assets, that's the equivalent of services, resources that we have, parties, that's participant that we have in Gaia-X. And basically you have assignee, assigner about rules that will derive into actions that have constraint. Pretty standard way of expressing policies. This model, they are very good example of those ODRL, Open Digital Right Language policies on the Solid project. So I'm going to go through one of it quickly. Here, for example, on the side, you have a policy to collect and share anonymized health records. So the notation here might be a bit unfamiliar. You might be a bit unfamiliar with that. That's just a turtle notation that can be transferred or converted to JSON LD, but also XML, XML and so on. So that's just a notation. How you read that? You have a policy that has an assignee, a target, and a set of permission. Permission 1, permission 2. That is enabling you to implement an IAM, Identity Access Management. And the interoperability of that is not because we are using the same technology. It's going to be because we are using the same language. So that when we define purpose, everyone knows what the keyword purpose means. Everyone will know what is academic research means. So the interoperability in terms of governance, and that's really what Gaia-X wants to enable a customer from one cloud provider to be using a service in another cloud provider, for the team lead to be able to delegate rights to his team member, and those team members to be able to use a cloud services from someone else. That's not because you are using the same technology. Of course, it helps, but the first thing is that you have the same vocabulary. And everyone here in the room knows that it's not because you are using OpenID Connect everywhere that you can use the GWT token from one place to another. So that's a very important part of what we work on. And this ODRL enables you to do write attenuation. So if you have the right to do read and write on a database, then you can grant the right to someone else to read, for example, or to write only. If yourself you have only the right to read, you cannot delegate the right to write. Sorry for my pronunciation if that's not very clear. The question that I got after that presentation was, okay, fine, how do you link that back to a credential? This way. So you will have, for example, verifiable credentials that you are using the wizard, so you know how to, for example, sign one. You have the credential subject, and the type will be an ODRL policy. And the assignee will be, for example, your participant credential. So the issuer, the proof here, the issuer, will be granting some policies that might be permission, prohibition, duties, obligations to an assignee on a target. Remember, one of the slides was about target. So you are able really to grant rights on something specific. And the interoperability will comes from the vocabulary again. This has two immediate impact. The first one that I know might be a bit confusing, but the credentials can be collected 1 year in advance if you want when you join a federation, when you are on board inside a federation, or on the fly at the negotiation time. What matters when you negotiate your policy is that you have the information at the time of the negotiation. If you on board 1 month in advance, 5 minutes before, or just no federation at all, it works as long as you're able to negotiate and to do the reasoning on the policy. So the implication of that is that Gaia-X doesn't enforce the holder a timeline to collect credentials, saying that you need to onboard inside the federation. We Gaia-X don't enforce that. Federation and data spaces are a convenient way to collect those credentials. And the policy are used to express right delegation, right attenuation as explained before. It means that so far we don't have the need to express a new type of entity which might be a principal. You have your legal participant have legal representative. That's already part of the model. And that legal representative might delegate rights. And from now on, from that point, you have a chain of permission that can be deduced and computed. I've said 15 minutes. I'm around 20 now, so I will stop. I haven't seen question in the chat, and then I assume that everyone understood. Alexi, if you are ready, I will maybe leave the floor to you for a demo of the wizard.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Pierre.
Pierre, is it still possible to ask questions, or is it only for the chat?
No. You, if that's okay, then maybe we go through the demo, which is a few minutes, and then we take all the question. Will that? Okay, good. Let's do that.
Okay, thank you. So you should now see my screen. So I will present you the last updates we made on the Gaia-X wizard. So our purpose was to ease the process of creating a verifiable credential, a self-signed one, and to submit it to the compliance. So we added a small button here, guided step-up, that is intended to perform this task. So we have two ways of doing it. First one is the simplest one. If I want to delegate the creation of a document, the document and the private key creation, I can use the simplest version. So I will go through it. So a private key will be generated on the browser. So I can only fill a simple formula to get a verifiable credential. Yeah, I fill the form, I accept the conditions, and then it will generate me a verifiable credential JSON-LD document with an already filled issuer. So as you can see it, we have an issuer created by the wizard and hosted by the wizard. So a DIT document is already created and we don't have to host it by ourselves. I only need to click on the sign button and it will sign me the verifiable credential. And now I can see I have my verifiable credential with a proof pointing to my DIT document. So now I can submit it to the compliance by checking the little box here and clicking on call compliance. And I submit it. And now I got a verifiable credential signed by the compliance as an output. So you can see here the verification method is pointing to the compliance of the Gaia-X lab. So this first one is the easiest way to do. But in case you have already your own DIT document hosted somewhere, you may want to use it. So you can see in the bottom of the page, you can use you have a checkbox to use your own DIT solution. So I will use it. I will fill the form again. You can see we have a few more steps to fulfill the required information. Now I have to provide a verification method. So I will use one taken from my DIT document, the ID document, and the private key. So this one is the private key corresponding to the public key mentioned into my DID document. I'll give a document name to retrieve it from the UI and an identifier for my VC. And I put my own issuer. Now we can review all the information we gave. So we see the formula get transformed into a JSON-LD with all the fields I mentioned. And we have our private key and verification method. I will say sign it. And we can see it is there. So I will submit it to the compliance. So we can see here it creates a verifiable presentation to submit it to the compliance. And I get back a verifiable credential signed by the compliance. So we wanted to make it easier with a simple formula instead of using just a JSON text field. And that's what we propose to you. And if you have any suggestion or question, you can ask, and we will be happy to help you. You can find the project by clicking on the contribute button, and we'll get the source from the GitLab website. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I saw some question in the chat, which is great. I will answer them, and we can also take others. So one of the question was, will the procedure for access will always be automated? No, we don't foresee that to always be automated. In fact, we believe that most of the time that will not be automated. And that's why we want to move from a binary vision of compliant, not compliant, which is not really helpful, to the, well, helpful, but to a certain extent, to a measurability of the interoperability. So if an access service is able to handle credentials with non-vocabulary, that obviously will have a higher level of higher score for interoperability. And if the onboarding inside a federation is only based on a PDF that has to be signed in 3 stamps form, then the score will be lower. Another question was about the DID methods provided or supported by Gaia-X. The DID methods is only DID web so far, but I would like to explain why. So I'm sharing on the screen, and the link is in the chat, why we did web. The key element for so that's the text here. The key element for the trustworthiness of an identity. By the way, identity, identifier are 2 different things. That's you're able to read it quite fast. Being able to demonstrate that you are in control of the private key. That is not being revoked. And the point in the middle is the most maybe difficult one to grasp, but that there is KYB, so know your customer, know your business rules associated with the issuance of the identifier, meaning that Gaia-X could support, for example, a lot more DID methods. There are about 200 of them. But if those DID methods are not associated with clear KYB process, KYC, KYB process, then they are not bringing much value than DID web. And on the downside, they are just fragmenting even more the interoperability. And behind DID web, that's basic HTTPS. So that's fairly simple to adopt. That's why we limit ourselves to DID web for now. As soon as we have DID methods where we have clear identified KYB, KYC process rules, and that's fair in terms of usage, for example, can be resolved for free, then we will be, of course, considering those. One of them that we have in the roadmap, that's, for example, the DID EPSI from the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure. I'm reading the question, sorry. Any plan for inter-data space interoperability versus inter-data-space inter? Okay. Priorities on the semantic interoperability, meanings, and constraint rules. So I will, for that, thanks, Johannes, for the question. For that, I will go and link to the trust indexes. The idea with the trust indexes is to measure, again, this notion of interoperability that you have between data spaces, with this idea of the Gaia-X policy rules provide the baseline, translating European values into criteria. And then it is foreseen and welcome for data space and federation to extend this baseline. And we provide also a technical explanation of how to extend those baseline. And then we have 3 different types of indexes that we can compute, in fact. The first one relies on the length of the key chain. So every time you have intermediate, you kind of attenuate a bit the trust that you might have in that link. You can increase that trust if you have many links, many chains. The transparency that will be the ratio of property that you must expose as part of the compliance and the property that you are exposing additionally. So more transparent you are, better it is, we believe. And also the knowledge graph. It's a graph, it's a mathematical object, and you can measure the eccentricity and the depth of the graph. If the eccentricity is low, it means that basically the same participant has signed everything. And that might not give the same confidence of a graph which is composed of several different partners. And the last one is the most complex one of semantic match. This one is very much research oriented because that's the hardest one. About the key pair. The meaning of generating key pairs automatically, that's for the demo. Yes, one point I wanted to mention here, when we ask to copy paste the private key, that's for Wizard. The Wizard is open source. On the web page of the Wizard, you have a fork me button. We want user to use it. Wizard, sorry. Development. There is a contribute. Contribute will bring you to the GitLab, and from the GitLab you can fork. So we welcome fork of the project. So you can deploy the same Wizard internally for your own needs. And under the hood, technically, we are using the web crypto API from the web browsers, meaning that we don't send any key materials to remote servers. So you can load the Wizard, disconnect from your Wi-Fi network cable, and still perform verification signature. And to the question of Enrico about the meaning of the generating key pairs, that's for the educational purpose on the Wizard. Indeed, if you want to use and to follow all the rules of the trust framework, then you will have to use one of the key pairs that are from the trust anchors. KYC, KYB should be done with the VC, not the DID layer. I assume that's a discussion for the DID methods owners. Welcome to join the EIDAS v2 maybe discussions. And Christian, I know that you had your hand raised. If you like to ask a question, if you are still here. Christian Weiss? No, not here. Okay. Did I missed any question in the chat?
As far as I remember, Christian was supposed to leave the meeting at 12:30 because we have some other meeting, and I just realized that it's already 12:30.
By any chance, do you know what was the question?
No.
Okay. The presentation is recorded.
What's the link? Is it known now for the recording?
I guess the recording will be shared after the event once we close the call. A question from Stefan, a very big question about a tutorial. So that's, I think, maybe a general scope. We are working on a Gaia-X Academy, and the Gaia-X Academy have different chapters. One of them will be a general foundation, basic understanding. It's maybe not even Gaia-X specific. Then we'll have architect and developers. So we have identified different type of personas. For the tutorials for verifiable controls, yes, we would like to help. I think that was demonstrated during the Wizard. So we have like the hardcore, the raw interface, but we have a stepper, and the stepper is very like we work on making it as intuitive as possible, so you can understand what is there, and you also have like tooltip to help filling the information. And yes, if you are using DID, you have 2 more service offerings, same thing. Oh, very good feedback from, yes, Pietro. In the real world trust scenario, don't have access to your private key. That's right, exactly. And you know what? You can use PKCS11. So unfortunately, that doesn't work on Firefox. I am struggling to make it work there. It works perfectly fine on Edge and Chrome. There are modules. So every interfaces that you will have through HSM, hardware security module, such as this one, for example, I have my EIDAS key there. You will need to, in fact, negotiate through that standard, crypto Kai. And
I'm an expert on those, Pierre, and you need to not access the private key directly, but to have a software that interact with your cryptographic CPU inside your token, and then it's kind of a little bit more tricky. You have to develop a software to sign with the JSON sign web. It's precisely what I'm working on, and it's kind of a way to enable trusted from the point of view of ADAS and rules, but also other foreign system of digital signature relies on this kind of mechanism. So it's not exclusive to EIDAS that we are, of course, main representative, but can also be implemented to all around the world solution open to the world, but still need a tool, a software or integration made to be available in an easy way. So probably it's kind of easy looking on the wizard how you can integrate, putting your private key there. But if you want really to sign in a trustworthy way in any kind of compliance, EIDAS, whatever, or trust all around the world compliance and trust guarantee, you need the hardware key. You need to keep your private key inside another. Otherwise, you are not credible. That's a point that probably we need to, and that's why I've opened some issues in the ICANN working group related to differentiated, trusted, that are following this rule and following, maybe implement this software, participant, and ordinary general participant that can have access to their own private key. It's kind of a very huge difference in terms of trustiness
yes,
in the real world.
But the workflow doesn't have to. So thank you very much for the comment. And you're right. Indeed, the copy pasting the private key on a web interface is not something that we should encourage.
No,
that's
really.
the wizard, no. And I believe that's a threshold, a trade-off that we have to make between hardcore, you generate everything yourself, and ease of use. So that's the trade-off that we are doing. For the hardware security module, luckily all the one I'm aware of are using and are compatible with this standard for the public key cryptography kit standards of PKCS 11. And they are integration of these standards with web browsers, with software tools. So it doesn't have to be more complex in terms of user interface. That will be the same thing, except that you will have a pop-up from your natural operating system, Mac, Linux, Windows, that will connect and talk to your hardware module. I could maybe do a demo. No, I don't have that token now. But yes, that's, oh, yeah, I know, I can do a demo there. There is one which is using WebAuth. For example, WebAuth is one way to talk with FIDO hardware modules. They are not EIDAS ones, I know. Test, register.
It's also not
and this one,
web. Sorry.
And this one will ask me for my PIN code. And you see that this Windows, this pop-up, that's not the browser, that's directly my operating system. And this is compatible with Android, iPhone, everything. That's directly a link to your hardware security module. But the security module itself is not building the trust. What builds the trust, and I will insist on it, that's the KYB process that was associated with the issuance of the key. Because I can have a key security module with my own certificate on it, doesn't provide you more trust. So the trustworthiness of the identity is really much to those three combinations together, not one or the other. And so it's the three together.
Yes, with WebAuth, you have some cipher algorithm ready to use to log in and even trust several challenges of authentication. but the producing and signing a payload with JSON Web Sign 2020, it's kind of different stuff and need to be developed. We are working on enabling this kind of interaction with a secure way, in a better way. But I also think that any enabler in that sense could be something that can add a higher level of trust to the participant. I don't want to think that participant level A or B, so two different levels. But if you are signing the verifiable credential, so declaring something, self-description was before the name of the Gaia-X credential, you are declaring something. But if you are someone who is legally renewable, or you have your own identity in the certificate that you use in your public key, you deserve to be treated as a trusted participant.
So,
I think so, at least.
It's a technical deep dive, so thank you very much for the content. I understand that you are working on it. Don't hesitate to use the contribute button here to submit your contribution, to use the EIDAS token there.
Okay. I'm still contributing in a lot of tables, so another more can be added.
Is there any other topic, questions from the audience on any of the topics that were presented today or another one? Nothing? Okay. Well, then there is no point to make the meet. I really enjoy those deep dive, but there is no point to make them longer than required. So our doors are always open. We have more and more people working in the communities. I will remember maybe one thing. If you would like to join working groups or to contribute, you can do it directly via GitLab. That's for the source code. If you are a member and you would like to contribute and join working groups, you can use the member platform. So the member platform, that's members with an S platforms.gaia.eu. I will give the link in the chat. And here you will find the information about the working groups. To have information about the working groups, and you can join any working group, you have to click on any of the three icons that you have there, either group emails or meeting or document repository. It's a bit sometimes not that intuitive. So if you click on the first one, so group emails, you have the list of the working groups here on the left and a subscribe button on the right. And that's how you can join working groups. And from that point on, you will receive the agenda, the meeting, the mailing list, and so on. And that's very important. For example, all the discussion with Pietro about the KYC, the HSM, and so on, those are happening inside the architecture and ICAM document, a working group. The ontology, we have the service characteristic, the rules, we have the PRC. So that's very much, it's extremely important that you can join. And that will be concluding the meeting for today. I wish you a great day, a great first day, and see you either in the open source call or the TC. By the way, I remember that the technical committee meeting is open to all members. And in the meantime, please shoot any emails or write us in Slack or GitLab. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day. Ciao.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.